great to see you, and it's great to run into some friends, ex-colleagues from NVIDIA, and I think Kathy Vidal is here too.
Right here.
Kathy's, lots of friends. It's great. We are one big community, all trying to move the needle forward. So I only have 25 minutes to talk about a really big topic. So I'll do my best to not speak too fast, but try to make it as information-rich as possible. This is a topic I talk about almost every day. In fact, this is my third keynote this week. So definitely. So, but there's different ways to come at it. I spoke on Tuesday at a retreat of all the European ambassadors. Actually, it wasn't just Europe, I guess. It was the San Francisco Diplomatic Corps, and so I think there were about 30 ambassadors there. Obviously, a very geopolitics-focused conversation. Today, I mean, some of the content's the same, but I'm going to come at it a little bit differently, because I think what we're talking about today is from an enterprise AI venture perspective, what do you need to be thinking about? How might that, why is this relevant to you? I mean, you know why it's on the front page of the New York Times, you know why the president talks about it, but let's maybe make it a little more tactical if we can. But we do have to start by unpacking the term. It's important because most people don't actually understand what sovereign AI is, and I see it misrepresented and sort of misframed in the media a lot, so I'm going to give you the benefit of hearing from sort of, the source. So sovereign AI isn't one thing, but I'll tell you what it's not, which is it's not a vertical. It's not a marketing vertical. It's not like retail or auto or life sciences, right? Sovereign AI is an idea, right? It's a construct. It's a construct that is rooted in the belief, because if you don't believe in it, then it's not that important. But if you believe that AI is the most important technology of our time, and you believe that it's going to fundamentally, if not generally, change the economy, the future of economics and security and so forth, if you believe that, then you understand that AI is a matter of sovereignty, which means it's important to the integrity and future of your country. This is a fundamental belief, and if you believe that, then you need to do all of these things. All of these things are important. You must have infrastructure, you must have models, you must have an AI-ready workforce, you must build the human ecosystems around that, you must have a literate population, and you must have policies that support all these things. They're all important. They all play different roles and so forth, and there's things underneath those words. But of course, it's just important that when you hear about sovereign AI, it isn't just about big data centers filled with GPUs. It's all of these things. And some countries do a better job than others, but more or less you will see this playing out all across the world. Now the reason, so that's the what. Now what's the why? I mean, why do it at all? And again, getting back to sort of there is that core belief that AI is important, but it's important for what reason? Economics, security, competitiveness. I mean, I'm sure I can throw a few more words up there, but I was trying desperately to be brief. So, I mean, obviously within economics you have, there's a lot of things, right? This is about jobs, it's about industries, it's about a lot of things. Security, it's essentially impossible to think of the future of anything. Cyber, defense, intelligence, borders, all the things that are important to that word without AI, and computing, frankly, all together. So security is deterministic now. AI will be deterministic with that. And then just overall this idea of competitiveness. Because if you put those two things together, economics and security, then you really have what is the competitiveness of a nation, both its ability to produce and distribute goods and as well to protect itself and its supply chain and other things. So again, these things are all kind of intertwined, but these are really the drivers. And then you kind of, okay, so those are the what and the why, but then maybe even beyond that, what's the real reasons countries are doing this? Why are the real reasons even companies are doing this? And I would say it's three things. I would say it's growth, it's geopolitical power, and it's prestige. I mean, if you look at a lot of the things that are announced in the media, deals that are tagged as sovereign AI this and sovereign AI that, I think it's really being driven by these three things: growth, prestige, and geopolitics. Now, most companies do not want to get involved in geopolitics. I mean, that is not a safe thing to do. Most CEOs don't want to get pulled into geopolitical issues. But of course, AI is intensely geopolitical now, and particularly computing has become so foundational to economy, so foundational to success of many industries, that it's become geopolitical whether you want it to or not. But nonetheless, economic growth and prestige are also big drivers for these deals. And so anyway, that's the big headline. So I just want to make sure we have a level set sort of understanding of what I mean, I asked if there are any questions, but that probably won't work. So just, if you want to talk after, we can do that. Okay, but let's also look at the history, because I think history is important. Most people don't know, very few people, it's unlikely that you would identify. You definitely know some of these things. Certainly everyone knows about ChatGPT, but all three of these things are the reason we're here today. So let's go back 10 years. Almost 10 years ago, right, 2016, an American company, Google, flies into South Korea and using very advanced technology, which we call AI, takes on the most talented, highest ranking player of the game Go. And most Americans don't even know what that game is, but most people on the other side of the world do. And it was widely believed that there was almost a zero chance that Google would prevail, right? The DeepMind would prevail, the AlphaGo application. And to everyone's surprise, Google prevailed, right? Lee Sedol lost, and he lost big time. And that at the time, that was a headline. It definitely made some news. It definitely was, certainly in the tech world it did, but I don't recall it being front page New York Times news. It wasn't front page Wall Street Journal news. So it was a bit of a niche news story. Certainly it was felt, it was quite a victory within the technology space. But what most people didn't understand what happened was this is the event that kicked off sovereign AI, 10 years before we even used the term. This is the event that sent a signal all across the capitals of Asia in particular that said, this is bigger than you think it is, this is more real than you think it is, you need to take this seriously. 1 year from this game, China announced that AI is its new national strategic priority. This is why. This is what happened, right? So this event was seismic, geopolitically, but most politicians did not really understand that. AI did not hit the Western society with the same vigor until ChatGPT. So ChatGPT comes out, look at that, 6 years later. So, it was a pretty big gap, right? 6 years later, November 2022. Now, I'm in Europe 2 weeks after this. I'm in the Gran Canary Islands with all the digital ministers of Europe at an event called the OECD Ministerial. And even I, at that time, and most of my colleagues at NVIDIA, where I was working at the time, did not fully understand the impact of this event yet. So I'm at this event, I'm on this island with all these digital ministers. It's like December 5th, and all they want to talk about is ChatGPT. That's it. It was the number one topic. It dominated every conversation, and I was really surprised by that. And I went back home, I sent an email to my colleagues, I said, I think this is bigger than we think it is. And it took about another 60 days for the West to really, really get it. And I think it was in early February is when Jensen made that famous comment that, this is the iPhone moment of AI, right? So it was really the spring of 23 is when the rest of the world really caught on, the spark was lit, right? And then, but frankly, the US government hadn't really clicked into gear yet. I mean, they were doing things, because I was serving on President Biden's National AI Committee. Kathy was serving in the administration as well. We had very talented people like Lynn Parker and many others doing things. It's not that nothing was happening, but the US had not really, really put the pedal to the metal, not until President Trump came into office. So really this action plan in 2025 is really the next major event in sovereign AI. It's really when the United States got truly serious about competing, in terms of our competitiveness as a nation. It's not that we weren't already leading, because we were, but we didn't actually have the policy framework and sort of the administrative support and inertia to take it more seriously. So these are the three events that really have kind of set things in motion. So just to kind of frame it out. Okay, so where are we now? So in my opinion, AI is redefining the entire calculus for competition. It redefines what good is. It redefines what customer service means. It redefines what product innovation means. It redefines the pathway to many different things. And there's a lot of quotes. I mean, I got a great quote from the European Union, a great quote from other presidents and premiers. I grabbed David's quote, but I mean, I think there's a lot of versions of that quote. I think everyone can say it in different ways, but they all pretty much agree that competitiveness, the new calculus for winning, whatever winning is, in whatever context that is, that it's going to include having access to large-scale computing and having the talent and the data and the capabilities to produce AI at scale, or intelligence at scale, however you want to think about it. And that, again, that's going to play out in many different ways. So the new frontiers of competition, as well as opportunities and challenges, the new frontiers This is the only 6 boxes I can fit on the screen. There are more, but I think you will increasingly, countries are going to compete on the scale of models, on the talent that they have, and you already do see that play out, right? There's lots of good examples. I mean, you take a country, look, Canada is big geographically, but small population relative to the U.S., but they have world-class talent centers. Many of the leading thinkers in AI happen to be in Canada, right? And so, you have the size of the country doesn't necessarily dictate who wins in these boxes. And that's what's so interesting and dynamic about this new chapter. You have smallish type economies. Singapore's relatively small economy. You have even Vietnam, which is the fastest growing economy in Southeast Asia, is all over AI. I mean, it's like the future of their country. Saudi Arabia, they've defined it as the future of their country. I mean, many small countries that have been sort of working their way up the GDP and working their way up the rankings view AI as the next wave of industrial revolution, not just for the world, but for them. And they're reorganizing and reprioritizing and investing at scale in each of these boxes. They're building energy, they're building data centers, they're investing in models, they're training up, they're building schools, they're doing all these things to understanding these are the new building blocks. And if it's true for a country, it's also true for a company. Right? That's why you can draw these parallels. And what's interesting, in the 6 years that I've been flying around the world and meeting with countries and having this conversation, long before it was on the front page of the New York Times, what I honestly believe, and I believe it's still true today as it did in 2019, is that we are entering an era where small companies and countries can create a new level of competition, a new value of innovation that was never before possible, right, without much greater scale. And you see this playing out. Right? You see companies with less than 1,000 employees, less than 500 employees, but with 10, 50, $100 billion valuations, right? That's inconceivable, folks. Okay? I mean, look at OpenAI. I mean, I don't even know how many employees they have. What do they have? 2,000, 3,000 employees with a $500 billion valuation? I mean, have you looked at other companies that have $500 billion valuations? They have hundreds of thousands of employees. Okay? You look at a small startup in Boston like Cursor with 50 employees with a $10 billion valuation. When in history was it possible to create that much value with that small a workforce? So really what you're seeing is that there's a disconnect now. It is now possible to create just orders of magnitude more economic power and wealth without having a large amount of space or physical facility or people. And so, of course, you have to have a lot of other things. You have to have talent and ideas and leadership, and you do need resources. But this idea, and I don't know, one of the big tech leaders, made this point. We're entering the era of the one-person billion-dollar startup, right? And I think that's right. I mean, we are entering this period where we could create tremendous value. So that being said, the opportunity is available to everybody, but the resources to deliver or to capitalize on the opportunity is not evenly distributed, right? So if you look at the geography of computing, there's a couple of ways to look at this picture. The G20, right, 20 countries, G20, 20 countries represents roughly 95% of the wealth in the world, right? But if you look at computing, that is, if you look at the top 500 or so supercomputers in the world, the ones that are powerful enough to compute a large-scale model, they only sit in 34 countries. It's a little better than 20, but it's only 34. So that means you have roughly 80% of all the countries in the world do not have a computer within their borders big enough to compute a large-scale model, which means that 20% of the countries in the world control the production of intelligence, digital intelligence anyway, right? So that's a problem. That's an issue. So there's going to be an increasing level of need to not redistribute, but to invest in these parts of the world and to figure out how to open up access and create both now they have data, they have talent, they have other things, but they don't have computing within their borders, and that's a critical component of sovereignty. So, and of course the AI trade, it's not been particularly good this week, but in general the AI trade's pretty astonishing, right? I mean, if you look at the math, it's amazing. I think I read that the U.S. GDP grew 2.8% the first half of this year, and 2.7 of that was AI. Right? So almost all of the growth in the GDP is AI driven, and as you can see, 75% of the returns. So, from a company perspective, from an entrepreneurial perspective, I think it's undeniable. This is driving a lot of valuations, a lot of investments, a lot of opportunity. That's not to say there won't be winners and losers, because not every bet or every business plan is going to be successful. But I think it's very hard to imagine a world where you won't have more computers, more AI, more chips, more entrepreneurs, more models. I mean, I feel like that's only one direction for that. But of course, there'll be, some of those won't play out as well. So in my view, as my personal view, that there's unprecedented economic opportunity, right? Unprecedented economic opportunity. The nations are not only investing because it's geopolitically important, and it is, because of security, and I mentioned, but they're also looking to create these launch pads for a whole new industrial revolution, but they want to do it within their country. And so as an entrepreneur, you want to capitalize on that, right? So what are those launch pads? Well, there's different versions of those launch pads. There's capital, and there are, many countries have set up accelerators and funds and other things and ways to make it easier for entrepreneurs to get access to capital. Customers. You need access to customers. Some of the smaller countries struggle with that one because obviously they have smaller economies, but the governments have a big role to play. They could step up and be a customer. And so often we're seeing that happen more and more. Computing. Absolutely, for my friends at NVIDIA and obviously there's other companies in this market, Intel and Broadcom and Qualcomm, we're all part of this ecosystem of computing companies that are working with the governments to create these computational resources that they're going to increasingly just give away. I mean, it's going to be a utility. You're going to see lots of supercomputers whose sole purpose is to attract and retain startups. And that's a very clear trend. Not everyone's done it yet, but we've seen it in a number of countries. And then, of course, data centers, power, and everything goes down that. I mean, this is, this you'd have to be asleep at the wheel if you don't know what's going on there, right? $5+ trillion, that's in the pipeline across the world. So connecting the land to the power and having the ability to permit and build these data centers is increasingly. Of course, there are 10,000 data centers already, just to be clear. There are 10,000 existing traditional data centers, but now you need this sort of additional layer of these much more advanced, much more sophisticated and larger AI data centers that go with that. But these launch pads, they're all important, right? I mean, this is connecting into these launch pads are very. In fact, we're standing in a launch pad, by the way. I mean, plug and play is amazing, and plug and play is all across the world. So this is an amazing private sector example of a launch pad, and a lot of credit to the visionary leaders and entrepreneurs behind plug and play. But now you have countries that are essentially trying to create components of plug and play, so to make it much, much easier to. In fact, I remember sitting down with the head of digital, the state secretary for digital in Spain, like 2 years ago, and she said, we have no trouble attracting entrepreneurs. We don't. Lots of people want to set up their company here. We have trouble keeping them. That was her statement. And I think that's true for a lot of countries. And so, I think there's a lot of interesting wheeling and dealing and deals to be made, for entrepreneurs. So I got to wrap it up. So, AMD is a vibrant part of that landscape. It's been AMD's been around. In fact, AMD was founded like a year before I was born. So it's been around a long time. It's had a lot of generations. It's a really fascinating company. Almost 55 years of innovation, and it's now in this latest chapter. And it's competing with NVIDIA and all the other companies to make sure that we have a diverse, robust, resilient supply chain of computing technology to serve the world, and with hyper efficient, full spectrum silicon from the cloud to the edge, and it's just the future. The future is really exciting, and I'm very optimistic about where it's all headed. But you do need optionality, and you do need diversity, and you do need resilience in the supply chain. And AMD is very excited to be a part of that. If you follow where we've been, we've been approaching 500 billion in market cap. To give you some perspective on that, when Lisa Su took over the company with her partner Mark Papermaster and others in 2014, the company's market cap was 3 billion. 2014. So she's taken it from 3 billion to 430 billion in 12 years. So pretty amazing turnaround. It's obviously a Harvard case study. She was the Time CEO of the Year last year. A remarkable story. But all right, that's the past. Now you have to look to the future. And the future is the company's pivoted into AI and obviously embracing all the exciting challenges and opportunities there. So I'm really glad that the opportunity to address all of you. I hope this gave you some good things to chew on as you go into your day. You've got some amazing panel and agenda for the day. So I probably should wrap it up and hand it back to my friend. All right, thank you so much.